Yo, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Now, in this video, we're going to be giving our predictions for each and every single fight that's going to go down at UFC 305, one of the biggest cards of the year. The first fight we're going to start off is, of course, Stuart Nicole versus Jesus Aguilar. You know, I've been studying Stuart Nicole, especially in his last two recent fights, because in terms of development, that's probably going to be the fighter that we see take on Jesus Aguilar. Now, in my opinion, I feel like Stuart Nicole kind of takes a little bit of some reckless entries. You know, he is still a little green in terms of being a professional and taking on some of the, talent that there is in the UFC. Now, for that reason, I feel like Jesus Aguilar is probably going to end up winning this fight. Whenever have reckless entries and you kind of have, a little bit of a angro kind of fighting style, and you're not really too calculated, you will have people in the UFC that will make you pay for it. Now, in my opinion, I feel like Jesus Aguilar is kind of being fed this fight, in my opinion, because the flyweight division isn't really a division that's too hot right now in the UFC. Now, of course, we have, seen the UFC try to remove the flyweight division altogether. And I think that the UFC is trying its hardest to keep this division alive. And Jesus Aguilar could potentially be a big name because, of course, he's Mexican, and Mexican fighters tend to really, really back up all their fighters. Now, I think that Jesus Aguilar probably going to end up winning this fight. Stuart Nicole is going to get an opportunity to fight in the UFC, so of course anything could happen. But like I said, Stuart Aguilar has that experience already fighting in the UFC. With Stuart Nicole being a green fighter, I think he is at a significant disadvantage right now. Jesus Aguilar is 2-1 in his UFC career so far, and I expect him to be 3-1 after this fight. All right, and the next fight of the night is going to be Song Kenan versus Ricky Glenn. Now, obviously, this isn't going to be like a takedown grappling wrestling type match because both these guys are mainly known for their striking. The thing about Song Kenan and Ricky Glenn is that, in my opinion, they don't have the greatest, defense in terms of striking. And I feel like that's always been their kryptonite, especially for Song Kenan, who fought Juice and pretty much got dominated in the third round by him. I think Juice landed over 100 strikes to Song Kenan, which was really, really bad. Now, Ricky Glenn is one hell of a striker, but the thing that, in my opinion, holds him back is being an aggressive southpaw in the open stance, which is kind of a little bit of an oxymoron. So with that being said, I honestly really do believe like Song Kenan has the advantage in, this fight, and I feel like Song Kenan is probably gonna go ahead and take the win. All right, and the next matchup is gonna be Tom Nolan versus Alex Reyes. I mean, there's really not much to say here. Alex Reyes has only fought twice in the last 6 years, and he's lost both of those fights. Tom Nolan has been the more active fighter, 24 years old, and he had that huge win against Victor Martinez like 2 years ago. He's gonna be facing a guy who's 37 years old in Alex Reyes, and that's just ancient, no disrespect, for that division. So obviously Tom Nolan is going to be the favorite to win this matchup. All right, and the next fight of the night is going to be Jack Jenkins taking on Herbert Burns, classic striker versus submission specialist. Now, in my opinion, I feel like Jack Jenkins has the advantage in this fight if he could get past the first round, because honestly, I do believe Herbert Burns is probably going to try to look for a takedown and end the fight early. And if he doesn't end the fight early, the chances of Jack Jenkins winning this matchup go significantly through the roof. I feel like Jack Jenkins has the advantage in this fight because Herbert Burns has been the least active fighter compared to the two. He only fights once a year, and his last 3 fights have all ended in a loss. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pick Jack Jenkins to win this fight. All right, in the next fight of the night, we got Casey O'Neill taking on Luana Santos. And in my opinion, this fight is a little bit of a toss-up. I really don't know who to pick, but I'm just going to go ahead and pick Luana Santos because she does have good striking and she does have a judo black belt. I really do think that she's probably going to pressure Casey O'Neill to the fence where she is more dominant, take her down, and probably land some strikes, rinse and repeat throughout the rounds. And that's probably what I am expecting to see at UFC 305. I do think that Casey O'Neill does have better striking compared to Luana Santos, in my opinion. But I just feel like Luana Santos is just going to go ahead and get it done. All right, and the next fight is going to be Josh Culibao versus Ricardo Ramos. And in my opinion, I feel like Josh Culibao is a slight favorite for this matchup. In my opinion, there's a lot of people saying that Ricardo Ramos is probably going to, land takedowns against Josh, and probably try to submit him because he does have the better numbers and the better percentages in the grappling and wrestling department, but that's not how I see it. Look, I think that we could pretty much come to a consensus here, ladies and gentlemen, that if you're getting finished, especially in the last 2 fights like Ricardo Ramos has, you know, you're probably not as well developed as someone like Josh Kulibao, who has only lost his last 2 fights via split decision. That's why I think personally that Josh Kulibao he's a slight favorite for this matchup, although I wouldn't be surprised if Ricardo Ramos, has a decent matchup against someone like Josh Kulibao, who might not show up that night. I think this fight is a little bit of a toss up, but like I said, Josh Kulibao has only lost split decision, and Ricardo Ramos has been finished twice in his last 2 fights. That's why I'm picking Josh Kulibao to win this matchup. All right, and the first fight of the main card is going to be Junior Tafa versus Walter Walker. And let me just say this, there's going to be a whole bunch of people out there that are going to hate me for saying this, but Walter Walker has the advantage in this fight, right? He doesn't have the better striking, right? Junior Tafa has the significantly better striking in this matchup. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. But Walter Walker is bigger and fatter. When you're bigger and fatter in the heavyweight division, you can do wonders, ladies and gentlemen. And that's exactly how I think Walter Walker wins this fight. I feel like he's going to probably wait on Junior Tafa to come forward, and wait for him to get into range, use his wrestling to try to take him down, and use literally his fat ass to stay on top of Junior Tafa, because the last time these guys weighed in, Junior Tafa fought at 249 pounds and Walter Walker fought at 264 pounds. That is a significant weight advantage, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I think that Walter Walker is probably going to end up winning this matchup, using his fat ass to win. If Junior Tafa can successfully maneuver within range, then obviously, he could win this fight. But the likelihood of that happening, in my opinion, are kind of low, and I still feel like Walter Walker is probably going to end up winning this matchup. Alright, the next fight of the night is going to be Li Jingliang taking on Carlos Prates. And let me just say this, man. Li Jingliang is in big trouble here, man. He hasn't fought in almost 2 years, right? Because I think the last time he fought was against Daniel Rodriguez, like almost 2 years ago. And that is a significant amount of time. There is a good chance that Li Jingliang probably has some sort of ring rust, because I mean, let's just state the obvious. Whenever a fighter takes a long time out of the ring, they never come back looking the same. And this might be, a good example of this. Carlos Prates is looking to get his 10th straight win in the welterweight division, ladies and gentlemen. And in my opinion, with Li Jingliang being so inactive in the last 2 years, I feel like Carlos Prates is probably going to go ahead and take the W. Let me just say this, Carlos Prates could potentially be a champion in the welterweight division, and I'm not trolling by saying that. This guy has a lot of experience in the UFC and outside of the UFC, fighting in other big organizations like One Championship. This guy has 8 of his last 9 fights ending in KO or TKO. He could potentially start fighting some ranked fighters after this fight if he has a great performance against someone like Li Jingliang. For those of you guys that aren't in the know, this guy is a problem. He is going to be a problem in the welterweight division. Only 30 years old, just about to enter his prime. People start having world-class performances around the age of 31 to 32. So expect great things from Carlos Prates if he's able to get through someone like Li Jingliang. All right, and the next fight of the night is going to be Tai Tuivasa taking on Rozenstruik. Someone is getting knocked out. Someone is getting laid out in the canvas. Someone is going to just get his lights put out. And in my opinion, I think it's going to be Tai Tuivasa. I think that Tai Tuivasa, he gets hit more. Statistically, that is backed up as well. Tai Tuivasa does get hit more. Rozenstruik, in my opinion, even though he is big and he's heavy and he's freaking fat, in my opinion, he does a better job at maintaining space between him and his opponent. And, he is known for having a very heavy hand and, landing some knockouts in the heavyweight division as well. In my opinion, I feel like Rozenstruik is just going to go ahead and take the W. I feel like Tai Tuivasa has been going through a decline, and a very fast and steep one as well. That's why, for that reason alone, I'm going to go ahead and pick Rozenstruik to beat Tai Tuivasa via KO. All right, and the next fight of the night, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be between Mateusz Gamrot and Dan Hooker. Now, in my opinion, I feel like Mateusz Gamrot is probably going to end up winning this fight. He's in a 3-fight winning streak. And I think that, his wrestling might play a huge factor in this fight, ladies and gentlemen. If we look at the numbers, pretty much Mateusz Gamrot almost averages about 6 takedowns per 15 minutes. We do know that Dan Hooker lands more strikes per 15 minutes. But in my opinion, I feel like Mateusz Gamrot is going to end up winning this fight. I feel like the UFC is trying to feed him a decent win, at potentially, fighting somebody for the title within the near future. Islam Makhachev, previously said that there is no real contender in the lightweight division right now. I think that Mateusz Gamrot could be a top contender against someone like Islam Makhachev, because they don't have very similar styles, but they have a similar base, which is wrestling, which is probably going to be, something that we could expect to see if Mateusz Gamrot gets through Dan Hooker. In my opinion, he probably faces another top contender, maybe someone in the top 3, maybe even Charles Oliveira. And in my opinion, getting a win over another guy in the top 3 in the lightweight division could potentially put Mateusz Gamrot in, title contention. Obviously, my pick for this fight is going to be Mateusz Gamrot to get the win over Dan Hooker via submission. All right, and for the co-main event, we got Steve Erceg taking on Kai Kara-France. My pick for this fight is going to be Steve Erceg. I feel like he has the momentum going for himself right now because he put on such a great performance against Alexander Pantoja, a fight that he was supposed to lose and a fight that he was just supposed to get dominated over. But he put on a great performance, a hell of a performance. He could have had the opportunity to win that fight, but I think that, some of the experience that Alexander Pantoja had over Steve Erceg definitely played a factor, especially going into the 5th round, where it could have been 50-50, in my opinion. I feel like Steve Erceg has the potential to be a championship level fighter, and he's going to have to prove it against someone like Kai Kara-France, who has a 46% chance of, getting a TKO or a KO win over Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg does land a lot of strikes, but he's not known for finishing fights, especially on the feet. In terms of the grappling, Steve Erceg does go for more takedowns over Kai Kara-France, but Kai Kara-France also does have, an element to offensive wrestling. So we could see anything in this fight. But in my opinion, my pick for this fight is going to be Steve Erceg to go ahead and take the W over Kai Kara-France. All right, and now for the main event, Dricus du Plessis taking on Israel Adesanya. Let's go ahead and state the obvious. Even though Israel Adesanya does not deserve to fight for the title at all, I don't care what you guys have to say. Go ahead and write them down in the comments. We go back and forth all day. He does not deserve to fight for the title at all, but he is going to beat Dricus du Plessis. Dricus du Plessis has to pray and hope that he could take down Israel Adesanya, even though he is not going to. Let's just go ahead and be honest. Israel Adesanya has some of the best percentages, some of the best numbers when it comes to takedown defense. I think he's like in the top 5 in the middleweight division ever, period, I don't think that Dricus du Plessis can hope for a takedown. He's going to have to strike with Israel Adesanya, and he's not going to beat a multiple time kickboxing champion. He is just not going to beat Israel Adesanya in the striking department at all. I think this is going to be a pretty easy fight for Israel Adesanya, if I'm just being completely honest. I think he's just going to go out there and start Dricus du Plessis. He's going to beat him. He's probably going to go ahead and get the rematch against Sean Strickland sometime in the future, but that's the way I see it. I really don't think that Dricus du Plessis could strike with Israel Adesanya, and he's not going to take him down. Israel Adesanya is going to come in there, storch Dricus du Plessis, and that's going to be the end of it. Israel Adesanya for the win. All right, very quickly, I'm going to read off to you guys my picks for each fight at UFC 305. Jesus Aguilar, Song Kenan, Tom Nolan, Jack Jenkins, Luana Santos, Josh Culibao, Walter Walker, Carlos Paredes. We got Rosenstrike, Mateusz Gamrot, Steve Erceg, and of course, Israel Adesanya. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you guys agree with my predictions. If you guys don't, make sure to leave your comments down in the comments. Me and you can go back and forth all day, every day. It doesn't matter to me. I'm ready for it. Anyways, peace out. Have a good one.